Okay, welcome back. Something of a departure here. I actually recorded doing the work you can see here, the gross material removal. And I've been doing the work and then sitting at the computer and doing the, it's a break rather than doing everything of the same task for hours on end. I alternate them. Well, in running that back, I came to the conclusion that it's just not enough action. It's like watching a dentist leaning over a patient in a chair doing a filling or something. There's literally nothing to see unless you zoom in very closely. Now, the wheel that I use is for this kind of task is 6-inch diameter, 220 grit. It's a French wheel, so it's got a rounded profile. Distinctly different from the type of 36 or 40 grit wheel that pipe makers use to shape stumbles. In any event, I'm not going to risk destroying this camera by having it, the lens so close to the action that grit from the wheel were to get on, scratch the coating on the lens or something like that. And so if you back away far enough to be safe for the camera, there's really nothing to see. I'm leaning over, you see the top of my head and my hands in front of this little wheel, and it goes on for quite a while, several minutes. And so I'm just going to recommend that if you've got whatever means you have for large-scale material removal, it really doesn't matter how you get there as long as you arrive at the same point. So I think it's more interesting, or not interesting so much as more valuable, to know how far you can go with gross shaping. And in this case, we're down to flush. Now there is tape, hockey tape, on the shank. Even though we're going to be modifying the shank shape, I wanted to get it zeroed in, so to speak, on its existing everything. Before we fine tune the shape, let's just get it up and running. So that is it to this point. Probably took 15-18 minutes to do that because the 220 is not very aggressive. The only thing of interest that's different from how I use a French wheel, it's twofold. One is variable speed. It goes from 0 to however fast I want, effectively unlimited, with a dial. And that's a very important thing. And the other is I don't have the French wheel facing me and then push into it. That's great for rougher, if you're going to do fine shaping, and maybe even if you could do it with the push method if you learned it from day one, I don't know. But I much prefer being able to look down upon the gap between what I'm working on and the wheel. So that right in the center of the screen there, that's the view I have when the thing is spinning. And so however you want to set your workstation up so that you can brace your body and your wrists and then be able to look straight down on the wheel, and that'll let you get to this point using automated means. So we're going to shift now to hand tools, which are much easier or more useful to videotape because you can get the camera closer and there's not a lot of grit flying around. So this will be a more interesting to watch and more useful because there's technique involved more than just the specifications of the machinery that you use. So we are going to leave the nomenclature in place. This is not a hot rod pipe where I just obliterate all that and do what I want to the rest of it. I'm trying to make this look like something that Bill Taylor would have been proud of back in the day. And I'll leave his name on it. Ashton, it's his brand. And there's a lot of wavering in these lines. If it's difficult to see, here, let's try this. Maybe not quite, sort of a little bit. It's hard. It's too difficult to make most of this out. In hand, it's apparent there's quite a lot of what's the word? Undulation in these lines, especially in the shank and in the bowl shape. The material is thicker in some spots than others, and all that we're going to do is regularize it, if that's a word, make the thing less geometric and a little bit more rounded all over. In other words, make this one look like this one. And the main tool for that in the early stages are these sticks that you can get from pretty much anywhere. Their purpose, the reason for existence, is nail boards. They come in a variety of grits in big packages. They cost less than, I guess, around 50 cents a piece or something like that. Beauty supply houses sell them. Amazon sells them. And you can get them in different grits, from starting at 100 grit. I think this is 100 on one side and 180 on the other. And they will bend. They're slightly flexible enough that if you put pressure on them, you're going to get you're going to get sags and swales and stuff, which is different than if you use a hard file. But you want a little bit of spring and bounce, which will become apparent when you're actually doing the work. And if you don't press too hard, they stay plenty straight. So remember, it's not the tool, it's what you end up with that matters. And so you rate, okay, a 50-cent thing versus a $50 file, the file must be better. Well, that's not necessarily true, depending on the job. And in this case, we're going to tweak the lines of this pipe to a higher level, so to speak. And I'm not sure yet how much of that is going to be actually shown. I think I'll back the camera up a little bit. I cannot do this by looking at the pipe through the screen. I've determined that that's good for, you can only take that so far. I'll have to back the camera away, and you can watch me tweak and shape with these sticks and various other tools, and I'll see how much of that is useful from an observational perspective after it's recorded, whether it gets uploaded or not. And then we'll get to the staining and finish part, which is always fun. And there isn't even that much shaping to do on the stem. It's mostly button and get the blade portion to have a more regular edges and not be square. But the slots on these things are already mostly there. So I'll clean that up, polish out the internals and so on. So I'll just record most of what I do and then review it during the edit process and delete those sections where just nothing really seems to be happening or you can't see it. Now, if you were in the shop or in anyone's shop, and you could stop them and say, show me what you're doing there and why, and you can ask questions and it would be interactive. But doing this video kind of a thing, there is none of that by definition. So I just have to make my best guess and hope for the best, kind of a thing. And alrighty, but that's it. I'm going to move the camera's position a little bit. This is this particular one's gone on for 10 minutes, so it needs to be clipped here anyway. So I'll do that. See you again in a minute.